Good evening, both our times actually,
Yes.
to Meyrick. Meyrick is the first person who I'm interviewing that I've actually met in person, live, human being to human being. We met at a Melbourne Bitcoin meetup group only a few weeks ago. I only just found out that in fact, I was really lucky with that because I had only just found out that there was a Melbourne Bitcoiner group, and I had been looking for one. I couldn't find you. I'd even been on the meetup website and couldn't find anything that was specifically Bitcoin. And I ended up going to a couple of just general crypto meetups and went, not quite what I was after, not quite my people. And then I came along, and then I joined, and then there was like a meetup coming up within the week, like within 4 days of me joining. And I'm like, brilliant. And it was only half an hour away. And so I got to meet you live in person. So I've met you live in person. I know a fair bit of your backstory, but I'm going to treat this as if I haven't, and that I'm getting to know you from scratch.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask all the kind of the backgroundy kinds of questions. Just before I do that, someone made the suggestion to me that that I tie in the Bitcoin thing sooner than later, rather than give the entire backstory before bringing in Bitcoin. So I'm going to give you a multiple choice question before we get started, which is, and the question is this: there's going to be 3 options, or maybe you can come up with your own. There's, what kind of Bitcoiner are you? Are you A, a hodler? Are you B, a trader, investor? No, trader. Or C, a revolutionary?
So I'm not a trader. So yeah, I'm not. I don't see Bitcoin as an asset that one would be trading in. Yeah, I could say I'm a hodler, but at the same time, I would say I'm a revolutionary, because I want to see. I don't want to hold on to my Bitcoin. I want to see that my Bitcoin, like that, I'm able to spend my Bitcoin as well. I'm able to see that there's going to be a community, or there's going to be. I mean, we want the Bitcoin standard, right? So we need to like somehow spend our Bitcoin and then probably replace it back again with fiat. But so not only hodling, but like, yeah, want to be spending it as well.
So does that mean, because you've been in this space for quite a while now, when did you first discover Bitcoin? Or when did you first get involved? When did you first?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like most, I guess like most, you could say I first found Bitcoin way back when, like 2012, 2011, actually. And then that's when I initially installed a miner, a wallet on an old MacBook Pro. Like, I mean, old as in my MacBook Pro from back then. But at the same time, I was playing computer games, and then my computer games started getting laggy. And then I deleted all of those, the mining software. You could, yeah. And then, then I didn't think about it for a while. And then I got back into Bitcoin 2017 again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that means if you're hodling, you've ridden it all the way up to 69,000 and back down again.
Yes.
And you're comfortable with that, and you'll just keep DCAing in.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. So that gives us the kind of the current. So this is going to be like one of those movies where you do the current and then you go back in time and you kind of get the lead up story until you get back to the current scene, as it were. So let's go all the way back. Tell me a little bit about, because the whole idea of this podcast is about what are the values? How did we end up with the values that we ended up with? That led you to be the kind of revolutionary that you're saying that you are, and hodler, who sees opportunity in Bitcoin, who sees a potential Bitcoin standard economy and world in the future. But I guess I'm looking for, are there common elements between us Bitcoiners in terms of our values that have led us to become these people who believe in this thing to the degree that we do? So take me back, Meyrick, take me back to the very beginning. Tell me something about your upbringing.
All right. Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, like we did discuss this, like when we met in person, but when I was, probably one thing that I'd say is like that that has come to me before being a Bitcoiner, that has always been with me, is like I don't trust really easily. So I always have to verify for myself, whether it be religion, whether it be whatever, whether anything that's told to me, like I'd make sure like even for a fact, if I know it's like someone that's an expert in the field, I'd still want to verify for myself. So that's one of the, one thing that has always been with me, and I always like will take that forward, I guess. And I was born and raised in a Roman Catholic family in Mumbai, India. And then I came to Melbourne around 5 years ago.
Why did you come here?
Why did I come here? Yeah. So I guess I instead of getting, I would say like one thing was like I was too comfortable. Everything is like I think everything's easy back home, like back in India. That is, if you're in, if you,
I
if
wouldn't have thought that.
yeah, if you're in a decent middle class family, and if you are, and if you're in a big city, you don't have to, or I mean, yeah, there's an aspect of like work life is hard. There's no work life balance. But when I say everything's easy in the sense, you really don't have to consider your, like you have you are like back at home, like we have a maid who does the cleaning on a daily basis. There's someone that's someone that would go to the shops for you. There's someone you have a chauffeur driven car. So yeah, there's like garbage that is taken at your doorstep, like on a daily basis. So like all these aspects, like so you get in one sense, you get really comfortable with like all those kinds of things in life.
Yeah.
Probably all the hard part would be is your work life, because if you're working a corporate job, then you're looking at like, because there's so much of because of the population, because of the competition, you're looking at everyone trying to impress their superiors, impress their bosses. So everyone is putting in an extra hour, so you're somehow forced to do the same. So you're looking at like 10-hour days at work, like on 6 days a week. So So why did I decide to come to Melbourne? I mean, I didn't decide to come to Melbourne. I was actually looking at New Zealand for like, it seemed like a more beautiful space. And then I had few people that have already lived in New Zealand who currently living there. And there's some people that have moved to Melbourne from there, or Sydney from there. And they said like, in terms of like work, I think they suggested Australia would be better. Like New Zealand, it's a little harder to get like work, and there's like lesser work, and people do tend to move here. And then I started doing, and as I said, like I do my own research, and then I started doing my own research into like why. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And how was the process of getting a job here and everything? And how did you find that adjustment? Because I've heard this before from a friend of mine from Sri Lanka, actually.
Mm-hmm.
She was saying to me that exactly what you've just said, everything was kind of laid on. And so when she moved to Australia, she thought to herself, I'm going to have to toughen up because I've got to kind of do all of this for myself.
Yes.
Which of course never occurs to us. As I look at life overseas and think, oh God, it's so easy here compared to many other countries.
Yes.
So it's fascinating to hear that for some people,
Yes.
Australia seems like the tougher option. So how did you make that adjustment? How have you gone?
I guess initially when I just moved here, I was still, for the first few months, I was still living in uni accommodation, which was sort of all right. Like, but I still had to like fend for myself. Then in that sense, I obviously didn't have a car back then. And then like having to go buy groceries, take the tram, come back. It's not used to any of that, right? Like, because if I did have to get something back in India, it's just a phone call away. Like I don't have to go anywhere. Like I just call, and then I have it at my doorstep, probably in the next hour. And so just getting used to all of it. And then like, just from one memory, right? Like, because as I said, like there's like maids at home or something like that. So if there's something that's spilled on the ground, so like there's like one instance where like I've come back like from a big day at uni, and I've come back home, and I was like, oh, the dishes are still in the sink, and like there's the wrapper on the floor, and like yeah.
Did you get used to it fairly quickly? Like, did you get up to speed? Did you complain in your mind? Did you like go, Where's my maid? I need a maid. I need to make enough money
No,
so that I've got my own maid in Australia.
no, so I didn't complain because, yeah, I mean, initially the only thought was like, because when I was new, like the only thought was like I was still converting back into Indian currency, right? Like I still
Yeah.
wasn't earning. Yes, I was still converting. I was like, everything's so expensive. I need to get a job.
Yeah.
That was like the first few, like the thought. And then 3 months or 4 months down the line, I did get work. And the job that I got as well was like being a student, like I had limited hours of work. So the initial job that I got was working in a warehouse and working, yeah, I used to start at 5:30 a.m. and start 5:30 a.m., then go to uni, come back. And then that just got, I did that for a year and a half, like while I was a student, because I didn't, and in one sense, like I saw like, oh, yeah, I'm getting like $30 an hour, which is like 30 or something, and like comparing that to like what someone would get in India, I was like, wow, this is good money, and like then I had uni going on as well, so I didn't want to, like, yeah, I'll keep this going and I'll keep uni going, and like I didn't think about it, right? Like, and just became like a whole groove that I was into. And then once uni got done, and then I saw like there's like so many other options with work, and like, I was like, I was an idiot, like thinking that was I could have gotten something better, or like, yeah.
So it took you a while to get into the swing of earnings versus expenses and what's
Yes.
yeah, and what's
Yeah.
kind of standard here. Okay. What kind of work did you then fall into?
So soon after that, I still moved into another warehousing job, but that was just after graduation. Because then I was off the limited hours of work. So then I had like complete hours of work. So then which was paying even more. So then I taken that up, but I did that for fairly like just for 4 months till I actually got like a corporate job. And then the next job that I was doing was business administration stuff for a dental supplies company. Yeah, and yeah, they were like a dental supply company that supplies across Australia and New Zealand. I was doing that for a bit, and because part of my university degree, I did study about blockchain. And then, yeah, so then
Okay.
and because I did supply chain management, so like blockchain tied in, like how blockchain can be used for supply chains.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So do you know much about VChain, just out of interest?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and then, so yeah, I was doing that business admin role at this dentistry company, but at the same time, I was still like, uh at that point, I was still investing, you could say, in crypto and not Bitcoin. So I was like still investing in crypto, and I was like, oh, and I was like learning about all these different chains, and especially, as I said, like applications of blockchain. So I was seeing like which cryptos are using blockchain. And then yeah, I was really into all of that. I was like, why am I wasting time like doing this business admin stuff, which was the same, like every day is the same. So I started reaching out to reaching out to companies based here in Melbourne that are either working in blockchain or either working in crypto. And that's when I got another role in like in a crypto research company. And I was working with them for a fair bit. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I want to back up a little bit because I feel like we've jumped in very quickly into your career and your your thinking, and I want to see how that evolved, because you were clearly kind of into crypto much more broadly, and then you became much more focused on Bitcoin later on. But I do want to back up. I want to get to that, but I want to explore a little bit more about kind of the values that you grew up with, and this piece that you talked about and need in terms of needing to verify. So I want to dig down deeper into who you are,
Sure.
who you were, and who you became. So you said you were brought up in a Roman Catholic family. We've got the sense of being a middle class or upper middle class family with kind of everything laid on. So we've got a sense that it was easy in a sense. Albeit long hours once you, I'm sure, both through study and through work. But leaving that aside, in what ways do you think your values came from your family and your surroundings? And to what degree do you think your values have evolved from there, or you were just born with different values at some level?
So, yeah, I guess, I mean, just with, being in that community and family, I think there's always been like I mean, yeah, there's always been like a focus of being honest, being a person with integrity,
Mhm.
and that's how everyone is around you, right? Like, so there's no question of you being different, and unless you wanted to be different, and unless you wanted to be, uh, in some sense, you wanted to be an idiot among all these people, right? Like, either you like, yeah, so yeah, so that's always been there. Like, that's always been part of me. And but I think one thing that probably most of the community that I brought up in, that I was an idiot in, is the don't trust verify part. Because yeah, everyone would blindly believe in the sense, blindly, like, one thing that I see disturbing is like blindly follow religion, which I didn't get, which didn't stick with me, right? And
So
yeah, I guess
was that like Sunday church and was it?
Sunday church.
Yeah,
Yes, it was Sunday church, and then like when we were young, it was like Sunday school after Sunday church.
right. And to
Yeah,
religious school. So your
and
main
religious
school was
school.
right.
Yes,
Yeah. The whole kit and caboodle.
yes. So from first grade up to 10th grade was a Jesuit school, and then from 11th grade up till my graduation was another, no, that we call it college slash university, which is also a religious, I mean, also a Catholic, this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so literally all your family and friends, and I know in India it can often be very big family, like extended family. Did you have siblings? Do you have siblings?
I do have a younger brother. He's way younger than me. He's 11 years younger than me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got your immediate family, there's extended family, there's community, there's the whole school community.
Yeah.
Everyone's believing in one thing. At what age do you reckon you figured that you didn't believe that?
Right. I think so. I think early on itself, like, yeah, we are in a strong Roman Catholic community, and like everyone around school, everything's around there. But at the same time, there was also like, I had friends who are Hindu, right? Like, and then when I was early on in, like, when I was young itself, I was hearing something on the lines of, oh, if they haven't heard the name of God, they won't be granted access to heaven. I was like, that's idiotic. Like, these guys like have their own God. Like, why wouldn't they get access to heaven? Like, what? And then that question is, oh, if you sin and you repent for your sins, you'll get access to heaven. Well, like, that's easy, right? Like, then I can keep sinning, and and then the day before I'm dying, I'll repent for everything that I've done, and then yeah, also well and good. And this is when I'm like, I think third grade or fourth grade, right? Like, this is like back then, and
Wow.
then and I think it was around sixth or seventh grade. Like, I was, because even part of school, we do have a religious teaching subject, and I think somewhere around there, like, you get to learn a little more about how the Roman Catholic Church operated, in the sense they operated on. So if I wanted to get rid of my sins, I could pay the priest, right? Like, this was like way back in, like in some sense, right? Like, that's how you redeem yourself. Like, yeah, you go, you tell the priest your sins, and then your penance, you offer penance, or you offer them some money, and then your sins are gone. And yeah, from that point on, I figured like, this is all a scam. And then you also learn about like the Spanish Inquisition in South America, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go down that part a little deeper, obviously, like, being in a school, they're not going to speak about it much. But as I said, like, if I had to, like, I obviously did my own research on that, and then you figure out, oh, okay, they've killed all these people, right? Like, just to spread the name of God, or someone did it. Yeah.
So did you talk about this with your family?
Uh, at that point, not so much, but I still, like, they figured it out, like, because I was not really into praying. I was not really into like reading the Bible, or not really going into churches, like standing outside church or something like that. And then I think it was around 11th grade or 12th grade, like, I should never like go out for any religious thing. And that's when my parents confronted me, and like, and then I was like, oh no, you guys cannot enforce this on me, right? Like, it's my
Ooh,
choice. Like,
how
yeah,
did they take that?
Yeah, I think they were kind enough, and I mean, like, there was little back and forth, but then in the end they were trying to like explain to me, like, they sort of explained to me, like, yeah, we get it, like, like, there's, but at least they were trying to like at least try to believe there's some sort of higher power. Maybe you don't want to believe that it's in the Catholic Church, but you need to figure out, like, there's sort of a higher power, and yeah, something on those lines.
And so where did you go with that?
Okay, so I didn't really, like, at that point, I didn't really take any of that thought seriously, because, like, I was like more on the scientific side of things, like, and like more on facts and less fiction in some sense. So
Mhm.
nowhere. But I think that changed maybe two or 3 years ago, and like, well, in the sense, like, now I see, like, yeah, there's possibly an higher power. Like, who knows, like, what's real and what's not, right? Like, who's to say? Just because
So
it's proven by fact, it doesn't mean, just because it's proven by fact doesn't mean, like, there wasn't any well, unicorns, right? I guess.
okay. So you'd consider yourself agnostic at this stage?
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. But what I also know from our conversation when we first met up is that you're also into meditation.
Yep.
Where did that come in, and what kind of experiences have you had with that? And has that been formative for you? Like, has that changed the way you perceive things?
Yep. It did change, and actually, where did that originally come in is like part of my undergraduate degree. My undergraduate degree was in business management, but one of the subjects that was covered there was, I'm butchering the name of the subject, but it's something on the lines of Indian management studies. And yeah, and for that subject, my group presentation was on meditation. So I had to, yeah, part of my, like, this thing was
As
on
part of Indian management studies.
Indian management studies, because
That is so cool. Why don't
yeah,
we study that as part of business studies in Australia?
exactly, yeah, and like, and they are not only that subject didn't just cover meditation; it just covered, like, all sorts of questions which one wouldn't ask, right? Like, which one wouldn't tend to ask. It's more on the Hindu, ancient Hindu scriptures and something like that, and tying it into business, and tying it into your way of life, and stuff like of how different foods are, like, there's 3 categories of food, and how that affects a person's mood and behavior, and how that
Oh
would,
yeah. Now is that all the Ayurvedic?
yes, sort
Yeah.
of,
So
yes.
the
So,
Pisha, what is it? Pisha Kamara, and I can't remember.
I
Doing
think
something about it.
it's Sattvic, and
Oh.
yeah, I can't remember as well. It's like 3, like, one tends
Yeah.
to, like, it's like, apparently, like, the spicy food tends to make you like an angry person, and then and it's Sattvic, Rajasic, and one more I can't remember.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like non-veg food and veg food, but I mean, I didn't subscribe to all of it, and I guess, but the meditation part did stick with me, and I was like, oh, and then just to do that presentation, I started watching some YouTube videos, and like started, and then seeing, like, oh, someone explain, like, how do you meditate, like, how does one sit in meditation, and then that's when I initially, like, sort of explored it, but then I didn't go back to it. And I guess I came back to it. I think I came across Sam Harris probably 3 years ago, and then that's when I, like, yeah, started, like, following some of his work, and then go, and yet again, like, who's Sam Harris, why should I trust him, right? And then started doing my own exploration on the side as well, and then yeah, and then I started, like, looking more into meditation, and at the same time, my partner, yeah, she was doing a good corporate job, and then she quit her job, and then she did an entire 6 months to she trained an entire 6 months to be a yoga teacher. So, and then she had a whole pile of her own books and what she got from her teachers, and we used to discuss some of that, and then that also tied in. Yeah.
What kind of teachers was she into? Who did she explore there?
Her teacher? What kind
Well,
of?
no, not so much on the yoga side, but you said sort of more on the, I guess, the spiritual and the meditation side. What kind of
See,
literature?
I guess so. One thing that I'll probably make clear here is, so when I say that she went on a yoga teaching side, it's not your formal yoga what you would see at a yoga studio, I guess, in one sense. This is more of a traditional. Yeah, this is actually the first yoga institute in the world that she
Oh,
went to.
wow.
Yeah. And yeah, it's not just yeah, so so you could choose to stay in that institution, and if you choose to stay in that institution and they get people from all over the world that come to stay there, you get like a small room, and like it's a big it's, you get like a small room part of this entire community. You get all your meals are provided which are completely vegetarian, and she had to go and do like vegetarian. It's so yoga, so like the meaning, the word itself, yoga means union, right? Like, so it's, you're trying to, so it's a union of mind, body. I don't know, more esoteric stuff, I guess, would fit in there. But so it's not just you're doing yoga poses. It's like about the whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
and you're not just doing, yeah, as I said, not just yoga poses. There's talks, there's meditations, there's your yoga poses. Yeah, they were doing some stuff where they were like, there's one part of the practice is like you put in saline water through one side of the nose, get it out of the other side of the nose. You put in like all sort of things to clear the body. Like you can,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Mm.
So, all right. So let's just come back to the Sam Harris side, and then did you actually start doing some yoga as well? Did you start doing some physical yoga or not? No.
Not so much. No. There was this point, like, cause I was doing that warehousing job. Like I sort of, I think, injured my hip back. I don't know what was it, but she had one of her books where it was like yoga for back care, and she has like few of these kind of books, which is
Mhm.
like really ancient books, but it's like for this thing. So I was like, I wasn't. I was in pain that time, and I was like, okay, I really need to go get like a scan and X-ray something, right? Like, I think something's wrong. I need to go check it. She's like, yeah, just take a look at this book and like see if you find something useful there, give it a shot, and then see how you go, like blah blah. So I was like, okay, cool. I read through that book. I picked up few things that I said I'll try, and I probably did that for a week, and then I felt better, and then I did that for a month, and I felt like even better. I didn't need an X-ray, I didn't need any scans. I'm like a perfectly fine. And yeah, so that's my brief experience with it. And I think one thing that I probably go back to if I'm still feeling little stiff in like in terms of just my physical body feeling stiff or something, is it's a traditional form of uh, practice. It's called a Surya Namaskar, which is an entire body stretch.
Mhm.
You've heard of that?
No.
So Surya Namaskar, like, just to translate what that means, it's salutation to the sun.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So just yeah, just like a entire it's a routine that you follow, in the sense that it's like a few moves that you get to, and then yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Okay. So I want to kind of tie some of this together into something a bit more holistic.
Mhm.
So did the Sam Harris get you into a routine with have you've got we talked about this. You've got the waking up app.
Yes, I
Were
do.
you doing that every day, the 10 minutes every day? Did it get you into a rhythm with that?
Yeah, I mean, initially, like when I initially got the app and I was doing it religiously every day,
Hmm.
and then yeah, then I got to, and then my mom and my mom's sister came here for a holiday, and then that sort of broke my routine.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then since then, I've really never gotten to going back to it being a daily thing. I think in between, like, yeah, it became a daily thing, but the longest stretch I did it for like about a year was like, yeah, soon after uni, and like before then, yeah. And now
And
it's
did
like
it
an on and off thing, yeah, I guess.
and did it impact you at the time? In what way?
100%, yeah. So it did impact me just to, I mean, if you're living, if someone that has never meditated, and like if you have really experienced uh meditation in its true, I wouldn't say, yeah, I guess in what I felt like in its true essence or its true sense, is that you can switch off the world in one way, right? Like you can switch off your current thought process or whatever it may be, whether negative, you'd probably want to switch off the negative side of things, and you don't need to subscribe to that way of thinking, or that way of feeling trapped, or feeling whatever it is, depressed. You can easily switch that off if you know, I guess, if you experience that once, and like, you know how to get back to that point where, you know, like, okay, this is just all happening in my head. Oh, okay, like, you know, this is, yeah, this everything. You can be, yeah, I mean, you can be depressed or this thing, but in reality, it's just something that you're playing over and over in your head, right? Like, you're not focusing on the present moment. It's something that you're repeating to yourself.
So I've found that really useful with Sam Harris's stuff as well. I also, maybe it wasn't just Sam. Oh no, there was a combination. So early in COVID, lockdown in Melbourne, well, lockdown number 1 of 6, I was doing Sam, and I was also doing, I don't know if have you ever come across a teacher called Ajay Shanti?
Sorry, who?
Ajay Shanti. No.
Ajay Shanti. No.
Okay. So I was doing a 30-day challenge with Ajay Shanti, and I was doing Sam, and which was just kind of had been part of my life for a couple of years by then.
Nice. Yeah.
And pretty consistently. And I had this, I was sort of going to sleep one night, and I just had Sam's words going through my head as a matter of experience. It was just, I can hear it in Sam's voice as I say it, as a matter of experience. And so I really kind of probed. I was just lying there with my eyes closed, and I was going, what is my actual experience right now? What is the actual experience? What am I seeing, hearing, feeling? You know, it just got really present in the moment. And in that moment, and it happened twice inside the space of a month, basically the bottom dropped out. I had an egoless experience, and I, you know, kind of had you use the word unified with yoga.
Yep.
So I had a feeling of all those things that they say, that kind of moment of oneness, and it was really momentary for me. Have you had any kind of experiences along those lines that have affected, either through meditation or any other? Has that been part of the process for you?
And that experience, as in like a feeling of yeah, I mean, it's hard to put it in words, right? Like what you're trying to describe here, I guess. It's like, is it basically a union or oneness kind of a thing,
Well,
right?
I think maybe for me it was more like, what was it? I remember the specific words that went through my mind at the time was, oh, look at that. They're all right. Everything they've been talking about, turns out they're right.
Yes.
I'm not my body. I'm not this personality. I'm not this mask.
Right.
I'm the consciousness that's been with me all along.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the part that doesn't change. So our bodies change, our cells change, our brains change, our thoughts change, our personalities change, everything changes along the way. And then there's this one part that doesn't change. And that's our consciousness that's been there, that's with us from the start, that is us. And so my experience of it, and everybody's experience is different. And then you revisit and revisit, and it changes over time anyway.
Sure.
So there's no way of putting it down to one thing, and you know, unless you're really living in and from that space. So my momentary experience was certainly one of, oh, okay, I get it. I'm the consciousness.
Sure.
I'm not the body or the mind. And then that was the thought that snapped me back into my body, and
100%. Yes, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Ever since.
Yes.
So, have you had anything kind of along those lines?
Yes. I actually a few. I've had experience on those lines a few times, and and I think is a few times, and it was mostly on psychedelics. So it was mostly on LSD, I would say, and.
So tell me about that, because Sam talks a lot about psychedelics. I did a lot of psychedelics when I was a teenager, but I was doing it to party. I wasn't doing it to meditate. Like if I was to do it now, which I for practical reasons, I can't really do with a 14-year-old in the house who I haven't really had a day off from or a night off from, more specifically, since he was
Yeah.
born. So, so it's not really practical at this end. So tell me about that. Did Sam influence you in that regard?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So, so when you said you were doing psychedelics, I'll just put this question back to you. What was it like? Any?
I was doing LSD. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So no. So this was not Sam's. I guess like I think we've spoken about it in person, but yeah, it's like just just being like these stoner kids from back in India. I guess we were, and I don't know if you're how familiar with you are with there's a big psychedelic. I mean, yeah, there's a big psychedelic culture back in India as well. Like and like yeah, I mean, kids would get dragged into it and not get dragged into it, and then there's other things that come.
Because India is the home of it's the starting place for a lot of techno, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes.
It's got a huge techno scene.
So, yeah, in some sense, what I think what happened is the psychedelic scene started in the US with the what's his name, Albert Hoffman or Ken Kesey, taking it out of the lab, distributing it, having these underground parties there, and then they tried to stop it, and then I'm guessing that was 60s 70s, and then from there it sort of got distributed to various pockets around the world. So like India being like one, there are like few pockets in India. I think it's gone to few islands around Thailand as well, and I'm not sure where else, and like European countries and like but I'm sure so it's come to, and then and I think India being like there's this like having this spiritual aspect of it, like with the Beatles having their going there and visiting, and then Steve Jobs having his own thing. So like I think there's like the spiritual aspect and the psychedelic aspect which brought in an influx of hippies in one way. Yeah. So, and this was, I'm guessing, 80s 90s, and then and at the same time I guess techno was getting popular back then, right? Like so I guess like there's a lot of techno that has, or trance music that has come from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I've got this image of you, a little stoner kid outside the church smoking a joint.
Perfect. Yeah.
Not the case.
Yeah, no, 100% the case.
Oh, really? How funny is that? Okay, so take me through your journey with that then. So stoner kid with a joint outside the church, that takes you, I'm assuming, at some stage with friends to psychedelics. You've got this influx of all this spiritual stuff coming in from the West, plus India is just the home of so much spirituality anyway. So how did all of that come together for you, and what was your experience of that then?
Yeah, I think it still goes back to like that same curious kid, as in the don't trust, verify side of things, right? Like at the same time, I was like what are psychedelics? Well, what's the history of it, and like what's the influence of it, and who are these people that were sort of promoting it? Why were they promoting it? And then what is this revolution, or what is this culture they're talking about? And then Ram Dass comes along. So, and like he used to be a professor, and then he is then a spiritual teacher, and like how does all that tie in? And just exploring all these questions, listening to like Alan Watts, and listening to and this is all way before like listening to Sam Harris, right? And this is way before, like this is all like when I was 18 and 19 and along those terms. And and then they experimenting with initially it was experimenting with psychedelics in the party sense, but we were in some sense at some points we are like a smaller group, and then I think with a smaller, like a really small circle, like maybe 5-6 of us, it's you get to have that like your individual experience within that space, I guess, as well. So okay.
And there's a reason I'm exploring all of this, because I do think there's a way that this ties in with Bitcoin. So bear with me for a moment. I'm just going to keep probing on this for a moment, because then I want to get to, I'm going to call it the spirit of Bitcoin, not the spirituality of Bitcoin. I think that's a bit much, but I think there's an essence within Bitcoin that is quite deep.
For sure.
And and that's where I want to kind of marry these two conversations up. So so in a smaller group, I agree, either in a smaller group or on your own, you've got a much better chance of having something that resembles, if not a spiritual experience, certainly a pretty substantial, a massively different state of mind, obviously, that gives you potential insights, if not into the reality of the universe, what's to say which is reality, but certainly a different reality, enough to know that my brain is seeing the world the way I see it is not the only way to see it.
Yep.
So if nothing else. So what insights came out of those experiences for you, and how did that tie in with, how did you integrate those with your personality?
Yeah, I mean, like some of the insights that is that disconnect, like as you rightly said, it's what's reality. So it's that disconnect from what you think is real, or what the institutions want you to think is real, and like what you can ascertain for yourself is real, or you try to see beyond of what's being projected out to you in some sense. So I think that, yeah, that itself, it like ties back into the same like curious mindset, or always investigating into different things. So sorry, what was the
So
original?
I guess, okay, so the question is more around, can you describe any of the experiences and the insights that came from those experiences, or what did you, or is
Yeah,
it
I mean, I guess like one experience, there was one time where, yeah, like there was like the only thing that I was like, I mean, I was, yeah, with my friends, and then there's like, okay, we need to do this or we need to do that. And the only thing I was saying, like, and they were probably like, if they're going to listen to it, they'll probably laugh because it was like a funny thing, because the only thing I said, like, it's what the only thing I was saying was, what difference will it make? Right? Like, so there's like, oh, let's go shut the gate. I was like, why? Like, what difference it's going to make? Because like in my head, like I'm somewhere else, like, and like I'm running simulations in my head, and like nothing really is going to make any difference. Like, you're going to, like, I was in that state of mind at that one point. And then there was another experience where this happened to me twice, where I could actually, like, what I was thinking was happening in the very next second. So I was sort of in a position where I was like extremely present in one sense, because I was seeing what's going to play out like a few seconds before. And this happened to me twice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that with other people. In fact, my husband's had a similar experience to that.
Yeah.
So was that, what's the question I'm trying to get to? Did that change the way you see the world? Did you come out of that experience, and was there a part of it that stayed with you, or that impacted the way you see the world kind of after
I guess it was not so much so as in like, oh, I've had this experience like last night, and then this morning or like the next day, I'm a new person. No, that didn't happen to me. It's more of a gradual thing, like, oh, reflecting on those memories or something. Like, sometimes when you're actually in a sort of a tight position, and you can sort of go back and you can see like this, what's real kind of a thing. And then visiting in that sense, yes, but not like a drastic change, like, because it was like, oh, it's like last night we had this experience, and the next morning, okay, I got to go back to work, and you're back to the routine. So you're not really thinking of that, like that's like gone in the back pocket, right? Like it's gone somewhere else in a different compartment in your brain. Okay. And when you really have to think about it, then that's where it comes out.
All right, gotcha. All right then. So let's come back to Bitcoin then. So you had this early experience back in 2012. So we're back to we're coming back up to present day for a moment, and then I'll see what I can do to tie the two together. But and then you had it was making your games lag, so you got out of the mining game. And then when did you get back? And then you said you got back in 2017.
2017, yes.
Yeah, so just before that 2017 bull market, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Good time
yes.
to get in.
Yep.
Nice.
Yes, yeah.
And so what was your experience then? You were still working for this crypto company at this stage?
No.
No.
I was at that point I was still at that point I was like new to Australia. So that point was when I was just new to Australia. Yes. And
Okay.
yeah.
And so just flesh out a little bit about the Bitcoin journey then. What was your experience moving from what moved you
All
from
right.
being broadly interested in crypto because blockchain was part of your original studies to moving more down the Bitcoin rabbit hole?
Sure. Yeah, I guess the major thing was when I started questioning what money is, right? Like, and why do we have this monetary system, or basically what is money? Like, if you question yourself or question this, not yourself, but question what is money, and you come to the other side of it, the only thing that you can end up is at Bitcoin. Like, that's what we call it today. Like, it could be called anything, but the thing that you would come out if you truly understand what money is Bitcoin. So yes, just going down the money rabbit hole, and then you come out to the other side, you can end up at Bitcoin. And then you'd be like, okay, but then Bitcoin, you can say, has its flaws, its technology, and then you start digging deeper into the technology side of things, of why it wouldn't fail, or the game theory side of things of it, like why are other people adopting it, and all these aspects. But if you question what is money, and like what's needed for a good money, and why do we need money, and like, yeah, you'd end up at something in the sense of like, yeah, something that can be scalable mainly across space and time. That is something that is scalable in our 3D world, that is space and time and space, or however you call it. So like gold cannot be scaled across space. Yes, gold cannot be scaled across space, and paper money cannot be scaled, or our current monetary system cannot be scaled across time. That's because the government keeps inflating it, and gold cannot be scaled across space because it's heavy. And yeah, so you need something that's quick and it holds its value for a long time. So I think that's the core of it, right? Like, and that's what Bitcoin gives you. That's one thing. And then you see, but why Bitcoin wouldn't fail, and then you dig into on the technology side of things. And I don't have a tech background, but I did do my own, like, that still ties in again, like being a curious person and needing to verify for yourself. You start listening to see like what this expert has to say, and then what that expert has to say, and getting broader opinions from different side of people from the tech background to see if they all come to this one conclusion, or even if they don't, like what are their arguments to be made against it.
Have you found any valid arguments against it?
Yeah, there's one that's been going around that is, but I guess, yeah, the argument is, in the future, like, because Bitcoin has its a capped supply that is 21 million, and then in the future the mining rewards would go down to zero, and like only transaction fees would reward the miners. So the argument being is, should we somehow open it up and increase the supply of increase the money supply, so that miners are incentivized to keep mining, and and it shouldn't be based on transaction cost. I mean, transaction transaction cost or transaction expenses to get. Yeah, so that's the argument.
I saw a thread about this on literally just this week.
Yeah, so I guess, and I guess for now, and rightly, I think it was Giacomo that pointed out, like, for now there's no point of, and like the few others that were there in that debate that pointed out, and now, I mean, we can talk about it however long about it as we want, but it's not a decision for us to make now. I think it's a decision for the next generation to make when they are faced with that problem. For now, we have our own set of problems to deal with, and we need to focus mainly on adoption and education. And so I guess,
early days. So, and you can't anticipate every issue that's going to come up along the way. All right, now you've got your own podcast.
Sure.
And you've got quite a following in India.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about the adoption over there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's as most places, I guess the main thing that would attract the like people towards this thing is number go up, right? Like everyone wants to get in, like, and I guess it's not their fault, right? Like it's no one to blame. Like the only thing that is to blame is our current monetary system, that like we need somewhere to store value that holds its value, or something that beats inflation.
Yeah.
So I guess everyone gets introduced through that side, and the only exchanges that exist there currently are shitcoin casinos where they're selling everything under the sun. But there's been a strong crew of Bitcoiners that has been growing, especially in with the from the tech side of things, with engineers, software engineers that are this thing, and these guys are orange pilling the other people. There are people that are getting burnt with shitcoins and then moving on, like then finding out more about Bitcoin or giving up completely on cryptocurrencies. So it's like it's the same journey, I guess, for most. But there's like a good community coming up, and like there's a great team that's working there, Bitcoin for India. I think I've introduced you to them as well, right? Like you're going to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be interviewing them next week. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Because they're doing like some brilliant work, because India is so widespread, like because of its scale, and each city has their own meetups, and because of the population, like it's not like a Melbourne meetup where it's 10-15 of us. It's like there's going to be 40 people at a regular meetup there. So it's good to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so once they've been through that journey and they've sort of come out the other side and, gotten wrecked, and then those who have stuck around have learned what Bitcoin is and why it's a superior money. What do you think are their kind of hopes and dreams for what it could mean for India, for the Indian economy, for the Indian people?
Yeah, good thing you asked me that, because for me, I don't really see a distinguish between nation states. Like, I mean, like Australia, India, and this thing. But I was speaking to someone just the other day on my podcast, as you mentioned that I have, and I was just speaking to another guy, and he sees, and he's a journalist, and he's been to. Yeah, I think when he was he's been like he was covering Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan in early 2008 and stuff like that. But he's now a Bitcoiner, and like he's exploring more, and like how he sees it, like number one country now, it can be debated whether it's US or China, but yeah, whatever, US or China. So number 1 and 2, US, China, US, and India is number 3 in that range. And so for like India can checkmate number 1 and 2 by just adopting Bitcoin. So that's some of the work. Like, I mean, like there's not only these guys that are working on it. I know Indians that are living abroad, like living in the States, are also pushing for some kind of, like, they're trying to get this message out there. But yeah, you're still playing with the old political system. I don't think for me personally, I don't see it like getting any legs, because you got to play the whole, and it's going to be that same political game, right? Like, and this is that ancient game, right? Like if the king has control over the supply of the money, he's not going to hand it out. Like he's going to pass it on to his son. He's not going to let that control go.
So what are your hopes and dreams then for Bitcoin, for the world, for a Bitcoin standard world?
Yeah, sure. I guess what we're going to see in the coming few years, in the next decade or so, is it's nothing through rose-colored glasses. There's going to be there's going to be violence. There's going to be, the people in power are not going to let their power go down easily. And we need more people educated on what Bitcoin is. We need more people focusing on privacy. We need more people adopting, and more than adopting, actually creating circular economies, and like having communities where we are actually pushing for this. Because as I said, like the governments are not going to be too happy to let go of their control on, especially on money. That's basically the thing that runs the world. So they're not going to let that go easily. And I don't know if you recently came across this other article where, like, yeah, one is that like many countries are experimenting with their own CBDCs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can just give like a brief background to the audience, like what a CBDC is. It's like a central bank digital currency, which uh, governments would be issuing, and it's just now from going from having paper money and metal money. Now we're going to have digital money issued by the government, which they can easily just create more of. At the same time, they can have more control over how you spend your money, on what you spend your money. With China now having its own CBDC with with has an expiry date. So if you're not going to use, so it's forcing people to use their money and like not incentivizing saving. So the money has an expiry date now. And some idiot politician in Australia has proposed a bill where they want to allow for that to be used in Australia as well now.
Yeah.
The digital yuan, that is.
Yeah. I read something recently that, was it BHP? I think it was BHP or Rio Tinto. I think it was BHP though, has agreed to buy stuff from China using their digital
Yuan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't
It's
see.
not the digital one, they're yuan. So they've gotten out of, the point was more that they're getting out of US dollars,
Yes.
about de-dollarization of the
100.
world. But if that can happen, then it means the moment that transitions to a CBDC, then that will be the currency.
See, yeah, what I see, what would happen is, like, many people would be like many nation states initially would be going off the dollar. Like that's already happening. As you said, like this company Rio Tinto, or whichever one that is trading for their goods and services in the digital, I mean, whatever, in the yuan, for you say. India is buying natural gas from Russia using Chinese yuan or the Russian ruble. So these countries know that, okay, now a hypothetical king, the US government, is creating for extra money, and like it's not going to hold its value. Like we'll start using all these other means, other currencies, that is, like, and like, yeah, US will start losing its value. Once US starts losing its value, it'll force them to accelerate the printer, and they'll have to print more money just to incentivize. I mean, that's how they are going to pay their armies, or that's how they're going to pay their offices, and that's how they're going to start bribing people. But as soon as
It's
people,
the only way they can pay their debt.
exactly,
yeah,
that to whom, but that to these other nations, right? Yeah, I guess. But like, if China's not going to accept the dollar anymore, like how would the US pay them back? And like, if other countries are not going to start I mean, they'll have to start. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who said this, but like they're saying nations are going to start playing hot potato with the US dollar, where they don't want to hold on to it, and they're just going to be passing it on to other nations. And you see it, and you see where they all end up. Where you see where the dollars end up is countries like Venezuela, Argentina, or some African nations, and those places are getting inflation rate in double digit or triple digit even. Right?
Yeah, indeed. So, so you want to see widespread adoption, obviously.
Yeah.
You can see some violence in the short term because nobody wants to give up their, their power. Of course.
Yes.
If we got through all of that over, let's say, a fourth turning, so let's give it kind of 80 years.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
What do you imagine the world might look like? In what way what would be the positives? What would a positive Bitcoin standard world look like?
Right, I guess, yeah. So in between from now to when we get on to the Bitcoin standard, I think I pretty much painted like a picture of violence and whatever. There'll probably be few currencies that are circulating in the market. There'll be like the US dollar system, there'll be like a Bitcoin system, there'll be some other shitcoin system, there'll be like a CBDC systems, and there's interaction between all these systems that will be going on like for God knows how long. And people will like, it's if it goes up to being like a free market, like people will choose the best monetary, the best store of value, but like that the market incentives will converge to one currency. And say let's assume that takes 80 years and everyone would probably converge to everyone will be forced to converge onto Bitcoin. I don't see anything better coming along in those 80 years. Everyone will converge onto Bitcoin, and then we would go beyond, and then we would probably get onto this Bitcoin standard that we speak about, and then we would be in a true deflationary economic system where the money supply cannot be increased by any external party, and like the money and the money cannot, and we don't have to place trust into any organization or any government body to dictate the terms of the market, to dictate any interest rates or anything of those sorts, right? Then we'll be in a totally new world, which would be, yeah, I guess it'd be hard for me to even picture what kind of a world that would be, in the sense, yeah, it'd be a extremely it would be a world of different incentives and more positive incentives. One it would be like, you don't have to like there would be more a focus on creativity, and there'd be people wouldn't have to think of how they need to save their money. So they would give them more time to focus on whatever they are focusing on. If they are a doctor, if they are a carpenter, whatever, they can focus more onto their craft, rather than rather than having to think about, oh, I need to save money into this shit coin, or I need to save money into that stock to beat inflation. Because if they are on a hard money standard, the money itself would be increasing in value over time. So they don't need to think about all these external investments. So that itself would incentivize them to save. And as we've seen back, like if you go back to when we were like, when the world was on a sort of on a global currency gold reserve system, that was when true innovation starts to happen. Because people are saving. With saving comes along investment into projects which are more on a long, which can be taken on a more long scale, on a low time preference system, right? So like, yeah, as I think Saifuddin rightly pointed, like there's like art that was created, and sculptures and everything was created in that era of like when we were on a proper gold standard system. I guess that's going to come soon.
Lovely. Okay. It's feeling like a very positive note to be moving towards a wrap up. There is a question going through my mind around, you're quite heavily involved in this. You're doing, you're going to Bitcoin meetups, you're doing your own podcast, you're hodling away. Tell me why you are personally so involved in it, like and wanting to spread the word and orange pilling others. Like, I hear your hope for the future. I hear that you fully get the disaster of the current monetary system.
Sure.
And yet what I feel inside a lot of Bitcoiners is there's also something deeply personal about it. So yes, we want to change the world for the better, of course. Why is it so important to you to spread the word of Bitcoin, to orange pill others?
Right. I think, yeah, I mean, in the sense, like one sense is like, obviously, like if I may use language, but like,
yeah, go for it.
like, yeah, fuck these guys who've been fucking controlling the car, like the money supply. They've been stealing from like, they've been stealing for the last 100 years, right? Like they've been stealing on innovation. They've been stealing on, if you'd see how the world works, right? Like, I mean, we are always constantly innovating and constantly like putting in hours of work. So why shouldn't like your purchasing power increase? Why shouldn't, if there's technology that's being developed, why shouldn't like the cost of, if there's major developments, just say in terms of housing, like why isn't the cost of houses going down? Why is it always increasing? People don't get it. Like there's like, because they're printing money, like that's the way they've been stealing from everyone for the last 100 years. So that's one major aspect. Like, like unless, yeah, that's one thing. Like, why should there be a central power? And like, if we are not going to push for push for Bitcoin and push for the separation of state and money. This is just going to be, this is just continue. And like there's people that are sleeping on this and like too busy caught up with Netflix or too busy caught up with the next soccer game or whatever it may be, right? Like instead of seeing what really matters and seeing what's really happening in the world. Like unless like there's more people like us that are talking about it and like probably help push this forward, I guess. Yeah, if you'd see like the next generations getting robbed by the same bastards, if I may. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one thing. And like just the other day, like my cousin was telling me something on the lines. Yeah, I mean, he had like a few things, but he's like I'm not a really social person. I'm not like, I don't come across like as someone who cares one bit about like whatever, like so he's telling me, oh, you're a selfish person and you don't care about like whatever. Yeah, I mean, like I don't care about these trivial matters in the sense like I don't care about like on stupid ideas like of, oh, like of satisfying society's wants, in the sense like there's one thing, you need to get married so that like whatever, like there's someone's married in the family or some sort of thing, right? Like that's, I mean, yeah, that's just like a social aspect. That's what do you say, like it's like a status game, right? Like I'm not playing any sort of status game just to show society or any kind of things. What really matters is like if uplifting the community, uplifting the whole human race as a whole. Like it doesn't matter if like, if in a status game, there's like, as Naval Ravikant rightly points out, in a status game, like there's, for number 2 to beat, there's always going to be number 1. There's always these numbers. So for number 2 to go up, there has to be a winner and a loser. But you don't want to play that game. You want to play a game of abundance where everyone is winning. We don't want any losers.
That's beautiful. That feels like a beautiful note to finish on.
I
just out of that was, I heard 2 things: fuck these guys, and let's uplift the whole of humanity. And that feels like a beautiful and magical note to finish on. Thank you so much for taking the time and exploring your past. It's funny, I first met you and I was surprised when I met you in person, and we've obviously ended up there again here now, that you seem like such a clean-cut young man. And then we end up talking about psychedelics and, fuck the man, as it were. So it's a lovely thing, because it's well placed and it's well intentioned, and it's with all the right motives. So it's been a delight and a pleasure, and we've got another meetup coming up just next week, so I'm going to see you in person in about a week's time. Yes, of course, Carrie. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, and sorry for going on these rants. Oh, I love the rants. I'm all for the rants. An absolute pleasure. Take care, man. All the best. Cheers. See ya. Bye. Yeah, bye.